look at your current list of customers, find out where they're at.
Yeah.
There are ways to get quick wins right away just by bringing people into the marketplace right out of the gates. The alignment that you can build with customers, the opportunities you have for revenue growth, and being able to get traction right away. You can do that with your current existing customers.
That's right. That's right.
Microsoft's purpose is in service of your purpose.
And again, 2024 is the year that partners come out as the leading edge of the spear on finding this buyer intent.
You show up to every meeting and demonstrate why you are relevant.
Every day I have to force myself to make sure that I'm taking one step ahead in terms of my own learning.
That flywheel of success is where you will build momentum, and that momentum will continue, and then you feed into the other systems to say, this is what we did. This is how we did it together.
Welcome to the Ultimate Guide to Partnering. I'm Vince Menzione, your host, and my mission is to help leaders like you achieve your greatest results through successful partnering. You know, we've been talking about the tectonic shifts that we're seeing in our world and our lives, the dominance of the hyperscalers, and the role of marketplaces and co-selling to drive success, and how that total addressable market is just a huge opportunity for you as partners. Well, I'm delighted today to have a leader who's helping to drive partner organizations to achieve their greatest results through leveraging both marketplace and co-selling. Justin Murphy is the CEO of CloudAtlas and an incredible leader in this industry. I'm so excited to have him in the studio today. Justin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So I thought maybe you'd give us a little bit of your background and the mission of CloudAtlas. I know you, from our experiences together, that you worked at one of the largest or the largest Google Cloud reseller partner, a company that we all know and respect, and whose CEO has been a guest here multiple times at Ultimate Guide to Partnering. But I thought maybe you'd take us a little bit through your career journey and ultimately what led to CloudAtlas.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that. A few years ago, I got a call, out of the blue from a recruiter at SADA, and I was running a enterprise product management organization at a bank, and he was leading a team, helping them simplify technology within the organization, really refining our technology stack. And so, I got a call to come work at SADA as an individual contributor, as an emerging solutions architect. And the very first thing I was brought in to do, and I think what was scoped out in my background, was simplifying enterprise procurement for organizations. And that's where marketplace began for me.
Yes.
And so we started off by creating this service that was meant to help onboard these customers to the marketplace, because we had 3,000 plus customers. We wanted to make it easier for these customers to transact and burn down their commit. So we started off with the services, and within 6 months, we had fully operationalized this and started to have a lot of success. And then over the next 2 years, we saw that grow from 0 to 20 million through the marketplace. And we released about 8 products that were previously services sold in the marketplace, and worked with 100 different ISVs. And getting the privilege of doing that, I learned all the niches in this area where things could really be accelerated, and seeing the real problems that ISVs were experiencing, especially coming to a partner like SADA, who is great at taking partners to the next level, but it's not great if you're not ready.
Yeah.
And so that was the impetus into us starting CloudAtlas.
Very cool. Yeah, I had some intimate experiences working with SADA. My son was an employee at SADA for about 4 years. And of course, Tony's been a guest on Ultimate Guide to Partnering multiple times. He's a 7-timer, in fact.
Yeah.
And SADA was unique in that not only did they create an incredible model around working with the Google sellers and doing co-selling directly with them as a services provider, but then they also helped these ISV organizations to achieve or ramp up their cloud solutions, and then co-sell with SADA to Google and to the customer ultimately. And I guess that is the role that you achieved there, and what you drove within the business, which was unique at that time in the industry. So let's talk about CloudAtlas. So you got started with CloudAtlas. What is the mission of the organization? What do you hope to achieve in the next 5 years?
Our goal is to become the trusted advisor for all ISV partners to champion their success in cloud marketplaces. And in doing so, we'd like to reshape the way that the future of enterprise software delivery. What I mean by that is, as consumers, we experience a great experience from our phones and from all of our consumer applications. And it's not the same for enterprise. Enterprise is big and complicated. But once you have alignment and you understand what the importance is of marketplace and you have commitment to make it a core pillar in your business, there's a lot of opportunity that exists there. So our goal is helping organizations achieve that.
So let's talk a little bit more about marketplace, right? We touched on this in the opening here, talking about the tectonic shifts, but I don't think people recognize what exactly has been happening. We talk about it quite a bit up on stage and through the podcast. We're seeing a dominance of these hyperscalers, right? These big three for the most part, and maybe you could add Oracle to it, but Microsoft, Google Cloud, AWS, about close to $400 billion in durable cloud commitments. So what's happening now, the buying has shifted to the C-suite, right? The executive team is now making a decision about a commitment, not a technology purchase in the line of business. And what that's leading to is larger and larger commitments, because these salespeople in these organizations are very good at sitting down with the C-suite, with the CEO and the CFO and the board, and having conversations about why it's in their best interest to commit to more. And what that has done now is these commitments are now available for software procurements and burn downs, and it creates this opportunity. But the way to leverage those opportunities are through marketplaces. So there's we talked about $400 billion in these cloud commitments, and marketplaces have become a thing. We've had Tackle here. We've had WorkSpan hosting our events. We've been talking about this marketplace moment that we've been seeing, right? We've been talking about it quite a bit, but it doesn't seem like we've achieved what we need to achieve at this point, right? I think this year Tackle said about $20 billion through marketplace.
Yeah.
Considering the scale and scope of IT procurement as a whole, approaching $1 trillion, right? And and we have Jay McBain coming on at some point later to talk about that. But having that amount of activity and procurement happening and only having $20 billion going through marketplace, what do you have to say about that? Why aren't we further along at this point? We've been doing marketplace since the time that you joined SADA, which is around 18.
Yeah.
And so why is it taking us this long, and why aren't we further along at this point?
Man, that is a loaded question, but a great question, and one that I've been hyper-focused in on for 4 years. And, how fast can you run to a cash register and check someone out?
Yeah.
When you've got 10% of transactions that are happening in marketplace, all as private offers, you're using this as a transaction vehicle. You're not using it for anything else. And now you are enabling co-sell, and that is a great thing to take advantage of right now. But the fact is there's still only 10%, the largest ISVs in the world, that are taking advantage of that. And the problem there is that 90%, the rest of the 90% are looking to the 10%, and they're saying, well, how are they successful?
Right.
And the way that these 90% are going to be successful is not the same way that this 10% are, because the 10% have the resources and likely have the alignment at the very top of the organization to understand how to make this a core pillar and make it successful. So there's a lot of opportunity, but you first have to have the commitment from the top down that this is something that that needs to be achieved. And then you've got to have a plan, because what's the very next step you're going to take as an organization if you decide that this is truly a channel you want to take advantage of? And we can dive into why you should really take advantage of this. But when you commit to saying that this is something that we truly want to leverage as part of our organizational strategy, the very first thing you got to do is pull a plan together. And what that means is you have to have the resources, you have to have the experience, you have to have full buy-in across the organization.
Yep.
And those are really timely and costly things to do. It costs hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, to bring in teams that have the expertise to do that sort of thing. And ultimately, you're doing those things to get an outcome.
Right.
And the outcome is transactions.
That's right.
Where we step in it is helping those organizations get that traction early on so they can get the buy-in, begin to build the alignment, and then build out the teams and the strategy to be able to execute this and make this a core pillar, part of your business.
So we've been, we talk about at Ultimate Partner, we talk about getting your own organization right. And a lot of that has to do, I talk about growth mindset. I talked about Microsoft and how they shifted to a growth mindset. And then getting the executive commitment is sort of like 1 and 2 in terms of the 7 principles of successful partnerships. What have you seen from the best? Like, you've worked with, not only at CloudAtlas, but also your time at SADA.
What have you seen from the best organizations in terms of getting the commitment right? Like, what did they do differently? Or what did you see inside those organizations that was different at the C-suite level? Because that seems to be the level where you really need to get that level of commitment and certainly then get the investments to go drive this right.
So, when we've seen it work really well is when you have the alignment across the C-suite, or even if it's a small business at the highest level of the organization, that they can be well aligned with the ecosystem in a way that's going to create that better together story. You're ultimately solving problems for customers, and what you're trying to do is increase that time to value. And within these ecosystems, that's what cloud is all about.
That's right.
It's the value. It's the value that you can provide your customers. And, these cloud ecosystems are built in a way to deliver that value really quickly. So you have to learn how to align yourselves to that. That means you have to build integrated solutions. So if you've got a product that can integrate into BigQuery or DynamoDB, you just opened up 100 new areas of opportunity for your business.
No.
And so it's about building the alignment, not only with your product, you've got to do it with your sales teams. You've got to do it with your go-to-market strategy and building a compelling value proposition that really resonates with the customers that you're trying to solve problems for. And you can do that very well in these ecosystems if you find the right partners. But the things that these companies that do really well, what they've done is they've built that messaging and that foundation, and they understand their ICP. And so they're going to that next level and finding partners that fit in really well in that space, whether it's a managed service provider or a reseller that has customers that they can go and put these things into and manage and make successful. That's a great area to go. Now, if you have product-led growth motion as part of this, then you're skipping to the front of the line in a lot of cases because you're letting people try the product instead of asking them to buy it.
Let's back up here, because I think for our listeners, I want to make sure you and I are talking in terms that we both know, but sure, make sure our listeners understand it. So, two things. I think one thing you said here is having an alignment to the hyperscaler solution. You mentioned BigQuery as an example. That's a Google Cloud solution. You're saying that having alignment or maybe integrating your solution with a cloud solution that sits on the native hyperscaler is a plus.
Absolutely.
Right? And then the other thing you said too, which led to leading us into a conversation about ecosystem, is not only building your solution as an ISV, but then looking downstream at your value chain.
Yeah.
Which is, how do you deliver, right? So we're talking about managed service providers, which are close to the customer, systems integrators, maybe other ISVs and other. We talk about the 7 seats at the table, right? We talk about like who's surrounding the customer and how's the customer pulling together the solution. So go in there a little bit more, but I think a little bit more broadly for our audience too, because they're not as far along as you are in this journey.
So one of the things that I kind of coined early on was bridging the gap between product development and marketplace methodology.
Yep.
And that is still truly the case is, when you build a product to, in iterations, and it's not always with the alignment of certain channels. And in this case, in cloud ecosystems, there needs to be some consideration there because there's too many factors that are involved. So, 90% of the ISVs out there have that problem that they're sitting with where they've lift and shifted something to the cloud.
Yep.
Or
that's right, because they start. So that I was just you had me thinking about this like these solutions were built independent of a cloud provider.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were built. Maybe they were on-prem software.
Yes.
Or they were something that was SaaSified at some point, but not with the consideration of a specific hyperscaler solution set.
That's right. Yeah.
And in fact, many of them have to go multi or feel that they have to have all 3, right? They have the solution riding on all 3 sets of rails.
Yeah.
Because that's how they get access to the customer through those 3 sets of sales organizations.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is when you get to talking with most companies, a lot of them struggle to really understand, like how to get started.
Yeah.
And one of the very first places that I always, immediately dive into with customers, and they don't really understand, a lot of ISVs out there don't understand, is look at your current list of customers, find out where they're at.
Yeah.
There are ways to get quick wins right away just by bringing people into the marketplace right out of the gates. The alignment that you can build with customers, the opportunities you have for revenue growth, the alignment with the hyperscaler sellers, and being able to get traction right away. You can do that with your current existing customers.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think that's always the low-hanging fruit, right? Because you say, well, how do I get the attention of the hyperscaler sales organization? It's really through your own, your existing customer base.
Yeah.
And bringing your customer base along to the hyperscaler and saying, these are your quick wins, right?
Yep.
This is your opportunity to go doing it.
And if you can get those quick wins and you're smart, in which most organizations that are having success do, is you create that secondary stream, which is building for long-term growth.
Yeah.
And, 4 years ago, I remember how many different conversations I heard where people were like, we'll never be click to deploy. We're always professional services. We're always going to customize. But how long do you really think that's going to be possible?
Right.
As a small business owner, as I've gotten started, I would have never been able to get my business off the ground and do the things that we've done in such a short amount of time had we not been leveraging product-led growth models for different softwares that we've integrated and pulled together. And so it's interesting because at an enterprise level, you still have long sales cycles, 3 to 6, 9 months sales cycles, and you have 3 to 6 months deployment cycles in some cases where it's highly customized. And organizations are not in enough pain to force that change yet. But when you get committed, that's the first thing that starts to change, because you realize that the time to value is one of the most critical aspects and will be the most important piece in the future. So companies out there that are getting that sort of thing right now are going to be the future leaders of this space.
We're still seeing, though, if I look at the big five that announced last year that they had achieved $1 billion or more in marketplace sales mostly through AWS at that point in time, a year ago now. Most of those were private offers, right? If not all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
So how do you move from private offer to click to buy?
So I think where you have to really start to understand is where can you start to segment your product into a repeatable fashion? Finding a way that you can provide value with your product in different ways that align with these ecosystems. So, a lot of missed opportunities are not abstracting away your data into APIs, consumable APIs, and interfaces that sit on top of those APIs. I mean, a great example of this is Fivetran, one of our partners at CloudAtlas. They create such a forced multiplier in the ecosystem because of how they connect hundreds of applications through BigQuery, Snowflake, Databricks, etc. And so you bring in, a startup or someone that does data analytics, like a company that we worked with, that can pull in and consume all that information and ask it any question that you want, securely and privately, and as opposed to putting on a ChatGPT and sharing your data out and that sort of thing. Then you see the opportunity there with what your Gen AI analytics platform can do now because of the power of BigQuery and hundreds of applications that stream information into it and set up time in less than 15 minutes.
So are you seeing it more in the Gen AI space that you're seeing this opportunity?
I see it in all spaces. Yeah. And I think that, there's a lot of organizations that haven't even began their journey on how to white glove, improve step by step into a frictionless buying experience. And, before it's been okay to kind of just keep doing the manual processes outside of the marketplace. We'll transact through the marketplace and then we'll do everything the exact same way. That ain't going to fly for me.
Right.
And that's where we're really trying to create that second track with customers because, Gary has taught me a lot in the last 8
Gary Gaddis.
Gary Gaddis, yeah.
For those who don't know Gary Gaddis, he's also a member of Ultimate, and as you, members of Ultimate Partner Experience Community.
That's right. And, when we first got together, he came into Louisville, and there's a story behind that too, but I'll save that for another day. We went out and played golf, and then by the 15th hole, we were discussing partnership. And one of the things that I don't think he could break through to me on until he finally did was, as a salesperson, a very successful salesperson that Gary is, I don't care what the product is. I have to sell it as it is now.
That's right.
And
sell what you got.
That's right. And so the light bulbs went off for me because I've been so hard in this PLG motion that organizations have to see some successes out of the gates. And when you have sellers that are not aligned and don't understand the value and are trying to get deals closed, and you're putting marketplace in front of that, which creates a lot of friction for them, they're going to move away from it.
Right.
And that's the perfect example of having 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And so what we want to do is come into these organizations and get that commitment to sell your product the right way now. And then let's work towards that long-term solution that's really going to make it faster time to value.
So you're saying you're seeing resistance within the ISV organizations themselves, even though there's this opportunity to leverage these durable cloud budgets.
That's right.
Why is that?
I think, there's a lot of people that just don't understand. They haven't seen the data, haven't been close to it. There's no denying where the data is pointing right now. I mean, You've got $20 billion of transactions through these marketplaces in a $1 trillion addressable market right now. So that's a very small percentage of the overall enterprise sales, opportunity right now. But that's going to continue to grow. And Google's not going anywhere. Amazon's not going anywhere. Microsoft's not going anywhere. And it's interesting.
And ignoring them seems to be the trend.
Yeah, until they get pulled in, and they're going to keep getting pulled in. But, the opportunity that's so glaring is, you said it just a minute ago, 4 or 5 have done $1 billion out of that 20 billion.
That's right.
So there's room for 90% growth beyond that 20, beyond that, the only the 10% really maximizing this 90% out there. And imagine if back in 2006, we had to transact via private offers for our mobile software applications and things like that. It would never have flew, right?
Flown.
And so when I talk about the small business experience where I'm able to quickly spin up these applications, integrate, build interfaces, deliver outcomes for my customers because these applications are so easy, enterprises are going to need to do the same thing. And so these private marketplaces where you can have curated applications that you can leverage and enable your teams to use these tools to run the business in their organization that they need to in their particular spot, whether it's IT, finance, marketing, and give them the tools in these applications in private marketplaces in a way that will allow them to do the same thing small business owners are doing. That's the only way this thing goes.
So let's talk about what CloudAtlas does, and let's use an example here. I want to look at like these new and emerging ISVs and ISVs that you onboard and you work with. What are the steps you take them through from start to success? And also, I think for, because we have friends of Ultimate Guide to Partnering and Ultimate Partner live events that do work with co-selling. A lot of them are focused on that co-selling. Some of it has a marketplace attribution. But I think about you more as marketplace first and then co-selling, not second, but kind of coexisting. Take us through like what your methodology is and how you help these organizations be successful.
There's when we have conversations with customers, we can tell real quickly how much they believe in this as a space. And you've got two customers. You've got some that are bought in. They understand the value. They just don't know how to connect to it.
And I see that a lot. I see a lot of organizations that come to us. They come to our events. They stop me on the street or on LinkedIn, which is sort of like the neighborhood.
That's right.
And they ask us, how do we become more successful leveraging marketplaces?
Yes. And then you've got two that just don't believe it. And, we're meeting with hundreds of different ISVs and we can tell real quickly the temperature of where they're at. And so we've really evolved quickly on our approach to this and made it super simple because back to kind of my earlier point is, where do you start when you actually get committed? Where do you start? You start with planning.
Right.
You have to assemble a team. You have to get alignment. You have to figure out what is your value proposition in this ecosystem. And it really requires you to build something comprehensively. And so even the customers out there that kind of push it off, like, oh, we don't believe in it. Well, you should at least make a small commitment to get a good plan in place with experts that doesn't cost you a lot of money to validate the space first. Right. And even if they don't do it right away, the very first place they're going to look when they actually do take it seriously is going to be the plan that we create them. And so that
what are the steps to that plan?
Yeah.
I want you to dive in a little bit more.
Sure.
Because I think this helps all of our viewers and listeners to really see what the steps are that are involved.
Yeah.
And how they might better leverage this marketplace opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So, everything that you can imagine needing to be created in terms of documents and artifacts to be able to have the insights you need for yourself to do internal selling, to start beginning strategic processes, making decisions, whether you're choosing a cloud go-to-market provider, partnerships, all those sorts of things. And so where we really start is understanding the product, understanding what that core value proposition is, and are there any gaps that need to be addressed right now? Because you might identify onboarding gaps.
Right.
You might identify sales gaps. You might identify things that are easily addressable. And you
help with those gaps.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so we identify like how can we connect the missing pieces right out of the gates? And we provide that intelligence up front. And then once we have that and we have a good understanding of what the competition is in the space, we help develop out core documents that can be used as foundational models to go build go-to-market strategies and competitive strategy.
Nice.
And then to be able to have the core copy and value proposition that you need to really start telling that message or speaking that message more clearly to this ecosystem. And then if there's technical steps and gaps that need to be addressed, we're laying all of that out. So, the work that we're doing initially up front is the same work that you would be paying for a $6-figure, $1 million team to do.
Yeah.
And those results typically don't come to 6 months to a year in terms of planning and exercise that it takes to get there. We have a formula that helps us get there really quick.
I love that, because a lot of times what happens is they hire somebody that they think has done it before.
Yeah.
And maybe not successfully.
Yeah.
And they spend a lot of money. It's going to be in that $1 million range when all is said and done. And then they're 6 months and almost a year in before they recognize that they've got a problem, and either they have the wrong person or they don't have the expertise or skills to help them. And then we're back at it again.
Which is most of the customers that we work with. And surprisingly, we still run into customers that know nothing about Cloud Marketplace and have phenomenal value propositions. One of the customers we're working with right now, Q&Code, has an amazing video transcoding product. And it's very competitive in the space, cost effective, is feature rich, and can help companies immediately burn down on their commits. And they were already working with customers that have those needs. And so they're immediately plugging into opportunities that can help their customers right away. And while they're doing that, they're building the relationship with the AWS team to do that. And guess what? They're going to have success there. And then they're going to move to GCP. And then they're going to move to wherever the market brings them next. Yep. And those are the kind of success stories that we're looking for. And we're rolling our sleeves up and getting with these people to provide the resources on the work that's hard.
Right.
It's not work that can be necessarily all automated, but that is part of our product and our value proposition, is that as we continue to grow, we're going to automate more and more of these insights so that we can provide a product that gives people the answers they need quickly to support their go-to-market efforts.
What about helping? We talked about the executive commitment. Does the work you do or the steps you take them through in the planning process, does that help them also to feed back to the executive team the ROI of these investments?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so when you make a lot of times the very first step is like, I need a listing.
Right.
And you get a listing, you spend the money, and I experienced this at SADA, is like, okay, I got this listing now. Where's all my transactions? And
right.
And to me, it's kind of ridiculous to think that that's how people think it would work, but it's understandable. It's understandable.
It's like putting up a web page and it's hoping a million people are going to edit it, right?
Yeah. And you go out and find partners, and you think, they're going to bring me in all this business. And, as one of my Armenian friends said to me, for big SADA partners and customers out there, you've got to be able to chew it up and put it in their mouth for them.
Yeah.
You cannot expect these companies to come in and do the work that you need to do. So you have to get ready for those big partners, and you have to win them over. And you have to be strategic. You have to find where those partners have the relationships with the customers that you're going after, and then you've got to serve it up to them.
Yeah. And these big partners being mostly the hyperscalers, right?
Hyperscalers and large, resellers and managed service providers.
Yeah.
Those are key right away, especially when co-sell is as important as it is right now. And co-sell is not, co-sell. There's a need for that. For the foreseeable future. There's too much customization. There's too much that's going on in enterprise, and it's very complex. But if you can get that right and begin motions towards the PLG, you're going to head towards the right spot.
So let's talk the three hyperscalers for a moment. I thought we'd spend a little bit of time here. I'd love to get your perspective. I mean, clearly AWS was out in front, right? This was built on, let's take the retail model that we've built so successfully and move it into the cloud business, right? And they created marketplace, or they really invented marketplace, for lack of a better term. Microsoft was we'll call it fast follower.
Mm-hmm.
It really wasn't until, in fact, when we did our very first event, we talked about the marketplace moment when Microsoft finally said we're leaning in on marketplace. They were the ones who lowered the fees, right? Amazon, everybody was at about 20% transaction at the time. And Microsoft, and Rodney Clark was leading, who's been a guest on this podcast a couple of times. Rodney said, we're going to drop it down to 3%.
Yeah.
And that shook everything up.
Yes, it did.
And it was bad in 2022, maybe?
That's right. In 2022.
Yeah. And so when they did that, of course, everybody's dropped their fees. AWS followed a little bit more slowly. Google was right there. Microsoft certainly... very significant investments by Satya Nadella in intelligent cloud and just cloud in general. And then Google Cloud, which has been coming on strong. And if you look at some of the analysis, really been growing the fastest.
Yeah.
What are you seeing from the three? How would you rank them, I guess? And I'll put you on the spot a little bit here. We've already covered this a little bit, but how do you think about them from a marketplace and then also from a co-selling perspective? Because I have a point of view on each of them myself.
Sure.
But I want to get your point.
Yeah, it's a great question and totally one that I was not scripted or prepared.
I have nothing.
Answer. So
that's why I love to throw these in there.
Yeah, absolutely great question. And so, coming from mostly a Microsoft background, starting off early in my career, most every enterprise that I worked
financial institutions, always on Microsoft.
100%. Yeah, and it's interesting because when we started exploring breaking into the cloud at a bank that I worked at before I was working at SADA, the first thing you try to do is you figure out how to justify the investment because semi what the value is. And, at the time, we were doing things to try to simplify technology in our API stacks and getting everything centralized so it's easier operationally, which every company strives to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the one thing that was really missing in that equation for me as I was really evaluating the Azure component of our business was, well, we're just buying compute and storage. We don't really think about the fact that there's all these other third-party applications that are out there. And when you use large Microsoft stacks, there's huge opportunities to see cost savings and operational efficiencies, better value delivered to your customers by getting more cloud native. And there's a sensitivity between data and where data is stored, especially in financial institutions, and there's a lot to balance there. But I think, when you really compare the different stacks of technology, there's a lot of big considerations that come into place. For larger organizations and legacy organizations that have big technology stacks dependent on Microsoft, you may be better off sticking with Microsoft to leverage that aspect. If it's too expensive to make that transition to some of the others. And I see that being a major value for a lot of legacy businesses.
I would say the enterprise value of the whole Microsoft stack, right?
That's right.
The M365 stack, which is pretty much still the predominant productivity suite, right?
That's right.
Out there. And they've done a really good job with Teams going after Zoom and some others to keep the stack in place.
And I mean, you look at the number of ISVs that are in the marketplace for Microsoft, it's like 20,000.
That's right.
And then, now switching to AWS, as I mentioned to you earlier before the show, was talking about my first marketplace experience being in AWS.
Yeah.
We were rapidly prototyping innovation, different innovation products at the previous bank I was working at. And we were doing AI projects, blockchain projects, and wouldn't have been able to do the rapid prototyping as we needed to within our AWS account. And so that was the first exposure I really got to it. And AWS has about 18,000 ISVs, somewhere around there.
And they were out of the gate sooner and faster.
That's right.
Because they really are that model. I mean, really.
Yeah. I mean, you look at things like MongoDB and the models that were created early on. I mean, that was what Marketplace was supposed to be.
That's right.
It's supposed to be a digital frictionless channel.
Yep.
And there's understandably friction in keeping people from getting to that point, right? And it takes time. But I think AWS has a lot of things going for it. We've just recently broken in. We've gotten several customers in the last 2 months that kind of pulled us into it because obviously, on GCP, I started kind of in that space. I'm saving the best for last.
Yes,
right?
I see that.
Yeah.
I see that.
So
you're going to make Daewoo and seem very happy here in a moment.
Yeah. So when we got into AWS, what I was really, really impressed by was the amount of interaction that a large organization has in the structure and the frameworks that they have to be able to help people understand really what it's going to take. Because there is a lot of documentation out there and you can get lost. But I would say, AWS makes it really easy in a lot of cases to get started. We work with a partner, sugar.io, and they're
we know John very well.
Yes, a very exceptional partner, and they're doing a lot of great things in AWS. And I mean, we saw them take a customer and get them listed in less than a week. We got ourselves listed to sell our own services in less than a couple days.
That's why.
That's impressive. Now, is there a lot of cleanup work that may need to be done for most organizations when you don't have that friction there? Yes. Is anything perfect? No. There's no such thing as perfect. And what I love about AWS is the programs, the expertise there, the opportunity seems to be abundant. There's a lot of people that need help, and there's no one doing what we are doing. Our metric is based on the success of each ISV, not how many we have.
Right.
We're not growing a product. We're not VC backed. We're bootstrapped to focus on each individual ISV's tailored strategy on how do you have success in these marketplaces.
Very cool. Very cool.
And so GCP.
Let's talk about GCP.
Okay.
Google Cloud Platform, for those who don't know.
Yes. So Google is near and dear to my heart because it was, as I came into SADA, I really learned to love the platform. And, you look at what Google's best at, and that's another thing. You've got to really look at each hyperscaler and see what they best at.
Engineering is really astounding.
That's right.
That's their...
And so the things I learned early on about Google is you got to look at what their products are, and they have the best data in the world. And they've got a pretty stellar interface, and developers seem to love it. I love learning it. I went and got all my certifications that I needed to get up to speed. And so I love the usability and the interface in Google, and having all of the AI tools be available to use at a business level now, the way that they're making their platform work is a dream. And I think, for startups and organizations that were looking to get a really great solution in place with Workspace and all of these different things that I have grown accustomed to and really love using, Google provides a really great space. And so you're seeing a big boom in Gen AI activity in this space.
Yep.
It's the fastest growing marketplace. It's the fastest growing hyperscaler. And so there's no sign otherwise that the 20,000 ISVs in Microsoft and the 18,000 in Amazon aren't going to slowly make their way into Google. Because the reality is, if you look back at like the iPhone and the Android era, there used to be a time when you could only get apps on the iPhone store and you could only get certain apps on the Android store.
That's right.
And we aren't there yet, but the way that things will move in the future is applications will be available across all clouds. And no one has quite really solved that silver bullet of how do I take a product, containerize it, and scale it across all three efficiently and cost effectively. So where cloud organizations get caught up is those migration aspects. And if you can get people into the cloud by leveraging more and more of these marketplace third-party products, then you're going to drive that consumption that the cloud providers want to see. And when you start selling more of those products, you're going to see the consumption that they want to see. So marketplace is a pivotal piece to these cloud providers. And, I said the last thing I'll say is, each cloud provider has an edge in certain areas. Google has a vast global network. Their security is top, the very top level.
They do security differently. That's why.
That's right.
It's engineering driven.
Global network. You look at those sorts of things, and so those are...
The data is never in any one place for any long period of time.
That's right.
It moves around the network. And people won't realize that that's what separates them from a security perspective.
That's right. Yeah. And then, AWS, they've obviously got a big stake, and they've been very successful doing a lot of different things. And I think, you definitely see some challenges there, why people leave and get frustrated and that sort of thing. Nothing that can't be solved, but there are lots of different opportunities across all three. And I mentioned the one with Microsoft and having legacy type systems. So you just really have to choose the one that is going to get you to the customers that you are going after faster. Yeah. And then if you have success with that, then move on to the next one and create a strategy that will allow you to penetrate that other market. But very rarely does going after three at once ever work out.
No, you need to land on one or
That's right.
two at the most at the time. We could talk about Gen AI as well. I think it's an interesting conversation. I mean, I remember it was just a couple of years ago when ChatGPT was first announced, and then Microsoft leaned in a big way. I would say that Google was sort of caught flat-footed in a sense, because they had all the tools and the technology, but they weren't pushing it as hard.
That was an interesting time.
It was an interesting time in early 23, right? It was late. It was November. It was just a little over 2 years ago that happened. And so it's been an interesting dynamic to see. And I love your point of view on where AWS is in terms of Gen AI, because I do feel like not that they've been left out, but they've been relying on third parties more so than the other two to drive their strategy.
This is one I don't necessarily have fully figured out. That's a great question, because I do view it as Google and Microsoft having the edge in the AI space. And you laid it out perfectly. They're leveraging third-party products, bringing them in. And honestly, that may be a really great space for them to be, because you can't be everything to everyone. As much as you want to be, even if you are Amazon or a Google or Microsoft, it's best to just do what you're really best at.
That's right.
And, if you can partner with groups that provide the outcome for your customers that they're looking for, then it's as good as having it yourself. And we're seeing how these large partnerships are starting to form, like Oracle and Google, Oracle and Microsoft. And, it's like, those are big shifts.
That's right.
Big tectonic shifts that we're seeing in the industry. And it's emphasizing the value of partnerships. And, what used to be everyone close-knit, tight, like fighting over everything, is now we're learning how to become more integrated and work together.
That's right.
There's a big enough pie out there for us all to have a piece.
I mean, it was shocking to see Larry Ellison and Satya Nadella sitting down for a conversation, right, about a year or so ago. And it was just wild to see, because it was like hell freezing over.
That's right.
People.
Yeah.
But it made sense, and Larry's got the right strategy, and he's obviously profited by it, because the Oracle stock is way up from where it was a couple of years ago.
That's right.
So I do want to, for our viewers and listeners that maybe don't understand that maybe they have a problem. What are the problem areas that you look and identify for what's a good fit for CloudAtlas? What's the customer problem that you're solving for? And we talked about this, but I just want to make sure we emphasize this for people that are watching us today and are listening to us today.
So for us, I think our sweet spot, and it's not the only place that we focus, but I think we're still early on in this. And our number one goal is to ensure the success of every customer that we work with. So we're hyper-focused in on proving out the value of what we bring to the table right now. But as we scale it, it's going to continue to stay the same. And our sweet spot has been those customers that are maybe, 0 to 10 on transactions in the marketplace.
So they're very new to transaction and to marketplace transactions. Maybe they have an offer up. Maybe they don't at this point.
That's right.
Maybe they're working with a Sugar or a Tattle or a Workspan, and they're just at that early stage.
That's right.
And then how do you complement those platforms?
So for the cloud go-to-market platforms, I mean, there's a ton of churn. And people come in, and the first thing they want to do is they want to point the finger back to them and say, hey, we got in.
Right.
Where's the promise of, we're the cloud provider.
Right. You got us transactable. Now what?
Exactly. And there's a whole learning motion that has to happen, and a buy-in motion. And you have to win the hearts and minds over these leaders and these organizations. And you have to get that commitment first that it's the right thing for the organization to do, which it is in most cases.
And then you come in with a plan.
That's right.
Yeah.
Come in with the plan. And so I think, and I'm sorry to reiterate the question that you asked was to.
Well, some people don't recognize that they need help. So what I'm trying to help solve for in this conversation is like, when do I raise my hand and say I need CloudAtlas, right?
Yeah.
Like, who's that fit?
If you're not transacting, definitely. Get with us, because we're going to be able to provide an outcome faster than bringing a team in to be able to do that. And then when it's right to bring in the team, we can help you guys get that alignment early on and get those quick wins. You may be having success in the marketplace and your operations is a mess with it. Your sellers are deterred from the process because it comes down to whether they're going to transact versus a PO or go through the marketplace. And they know that if they have to go through the marketplace and it's a pain for them to close a deal, that's adding one more variable to the closing.
And then how do you help with that? How do you help with that sales enablement?
Well, when you have buy-in from the top that this is going to be a major pillar, then you can enforce the training that needs to be done to build that alignment and teach these sellers how to use the levers and knobs in this space, because it's a motion that has to be learned. And Gary is the expert at this. Gary has done this. He's been very successful with multiple companies where he has increased deal sizes. He's helped others increase deal sizes. He's shown how you can build pathways into AWS sellers and use all sorts of techniques that are going to help you guys win business. And that's the greatest thing about what we do is we can help people immediately sell what they have. And then while we're selling what they have, we're identifying the opportunities to grow. And so the key people, there is a wide, when you look at 0 to 10, that could be big or small companies. It could be a services organization wanting to productize and get and transact more through the marketplaces because they can productize services. So, we work with, companies all the way down to the beginning, Gen AI, all the way up to multi-billion-dollar services organizations that are trying to figure out how do we get products in the marketplace like SADA did.
Right.
And we do that. And it's a matter of being that trusted advisor where we can sit down and help them plan fast and get something in motion to be executed. And then, you get those quick wins, and then you can slowly start to win the buy-in over the organization that needs those sorts of things.
So it might not just be an ISV you're working with. It might also be a reseller. We used to have the large resellers at Microsoft. Insight was one of them, and CWSHI, I can rattle off a bunch of names in these organizations, but they don't have an effective marketplace strategy. So some of those organizations might be organizations that would work with CloudAtlas
100%
to build out their ISV strategy and have an integrated approach.
That's right.
When they go to their customer. That's interesting. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
So we know some of those organizations pretty well, actually.
Yeah.
Their ultimate partner. They come to our events. So Justin, what does the future look like for you in CloudAtlas?
The future looks like we are building a proprietary data set that is going to be accessible to ISVs. They can get quick answers on how they can really scale their strategy. And we provide the services arms to also help supplement and augment the resources necessary to execute those things. And our goal is really to become the trusted advisor in this space. There's not a silver bullet for this. It takes hard work, hustle, and commitment to help each one of these customers. And, our goal is to help bridge the gap between product development and marketplace methodology and help these organizations find the right partners that are truly going to help them drive revenue in this space.
And have a repeatable methodology.
That's right.
I've heard you say multiple times here.
That's right.
Yeah. So this is a favorite question I have, Justin. You're hosting a dinner party.
Yep. And
you can host this dinner party anywhere in the world. It might be in Louisville. It might be here in Boca Raton. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, they're a beautiful background we had here. And you can invite any 3 guests to this amazing dinner party. Whom would you invite, Justin, and why?
Yeah. I think ultimately my first thought goes to my dad, my mom, and my brother, who all passed away in the last few years. And, they had a big impact on, who I became, professionally and who I am as a person now. And it really comes from a place of love and wanting to genuinely help others that want to be helped. And, I've developed a skill set that's very niche and is been very beneficial to a lot of people. And, you can even tell in our mascot, we've got a big husky Atlas figure. Those guys are usually pretty cut up.
Yeah.
But I think subconsciously, I was really imagining that Atlas figure to be a relatable, huggable kind of guy. And so we got this big Atlas guy. And both my brother and my dad were morbidly obese guys.
Cool.
And, that had an effect on my life. But, they were 2 of the most loving and smart and creative, both IT engineering brains that you'd ever. My dad was a biomedical engineer for 27 years.
Wow.
Had several hospital patents. My brother owned multiple restaurants, had a technology business, was very successful. And I learned from these people, just the amount of love that they had for others and the ability that they had to solve problems. And, for them to see kind of what I'm doing now, it would be awesome to have a conversation with them about it. And I think they made me feel like something like this would eventually happen. They were always there to kind of, push me in this direction. And, my mom, she was a quilter and a teacher. And, this is all manifested into this positive approach to solving real world problems with love, compassion, and, execution to make it happen. And the world simply needs more of that right now.
I love what you had to say about your family.
Thank you.
And is that what your drive is?
Oh yeah. 100%. Yeah. I mean, my family is 100% my drive. I have two boys that a lot of people see a lot of, Sullivan and Lewis, who are characters in themselves. Amazing hearts at just such a young age. And, at the end of the day, if I could do anything in this world, it's just to spread that love and kindness to others. And it's really nice. I know, there's this book that I've read recently. And one of the quotes is, if what you do is a true extension of yourself, then no one can be competitive with you.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that's what we're doing is we're going out and solving the problems that a lot of people don't want to solve because a lot of people are pushed away from it or have tried and not had success. And it takes persistence, perseverance, and, the willingness to stay after something when you know it's right. And a lot of people don't understand it. So
I like the word grit, in fact.
Yeah.
It ties into that.
That's right. It's a great word.
Yeah. So I can't believe it. We are at 2025. It's absolutely wild. We're at the halfway point in this decade. We call it the decade of the ecosystem after our good friend Jay McBain. What would be your advice for our viewers and our listeners today on how they can optimize for success for this new year?
I would take a deep, hard look at where your customers are at and decide right now whether or not they're in the marketplaces or not. Because I think for most customers, marketplace may not be the right place for you out of the gate.
Interesting.
Interesting
that you said that.
It may not be. You may not be ready. But if you do decide that you think you're ready and you have enough customers there that can go and you can capture them there, then you have to plan this thing out. Yeah. This isn't just go sign up for marketplace, go in and do the same thing you were doing. That ain't going to work. And it really hasn't worked for anyone that's tried that. So if you are going to do it, determine whether or not you're going to commit to it or not. Don't do the 1 foot in, 1 foot out thing. It's never worked out for anyone that I've worked with.
No, I love that advice. And so I talk about executive commitment. I mentioned this earlier. Just commitment means you're all in.
Yes.
It's not like 1 foot in, 1 foot.
That's right.
I see it in so many organizations. It's great advice.
Yeah.
Justin, you've been an amazing guest. So excited to have you here in Boca. Have you fly in? You've been flying all over the country this week. Right. So excited that you made the stop here in Boca for us today. And for those of you who want to follow along, Justin, how did they get in touch with you in CloudAtlas?
So you can visit us at cloudatlas.pro. You won't miss us on LinkedIn. We push a lot of content out.
Almost as much as me.
Yeah. We're having a lot of fun. And,
nice.
That's the other big piece about this is we've created a tight community. I've got great partnerships in place. I have a great business partner with Gary. We have an amazing new VP of sales that came in with a lot of experience. It's just been a lot of fun.
Nice.
And, it makes doing all this really worthwhile when you got people surrounding you that are having fun and having success at the same time.
So Justin Murphy or Gary Gaddis at LinkedIn.
That's right.
DM them there.
And I want to thank you for watching or listening to this episode of The Ultimate Guide to Partnering. If you're not already subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or another platform, your subscription helps us find more amazing guests. And if you're watching us on YouTube, you can also hit subscribe, as we're starting to build this YouTube community of viewers supporting Ultimate Guide to Partnering. We also have the Ultimate Guide to Partnering community, Ultimate Partner Experience. And you can find us on the ultimatepartner.com. You can sign up for UPX, Ultimate Partner Experience there. And you can also sign up for our free newsletter. I'd love to have you follow along as we feature amazing guests like Justin here today. So thank you for following, thank you for listening, and thank you for supporting the Ultimate Guide to Partnering.